Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Planning Board meeting for June 9th. Before we get started, I wanted to read some announcements about this remote meeting for the Planning Board. My name is Carrie Martinek. I'm the chair of the Planning Board. This open meeting of the Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, the town of Northborough has been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of the planning board are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows the planning board to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda, by tuning into CATV government channels, Verizon Channel 30 or Charter Channel 192, or by visiting the town's website and going to the Department of Cable Access Television and click What's Playing Live. If you're dialing in from a phone and would like to raise your hand to speak, you will need to press *9 in order for me to see that you'd like to be recognized. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comments. I'd like to confirm that our board members are in attendance today. What I will do is call your name and please respond in the affirmative. Anthony Zaitin.
Here.
Michelle Gillespie.
Here.
Millie Milton.
Here.
Amy Paretsky.
Here.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Kathy Jubert.
Here.
What do I see there? Oh, Fred Litchfield.
Here.
And Bob Federico.
Here.
Okay, great. And David Kane, I'll recognize you as our IT person on the line. Thank you. We do have some speakers that will be presenting this evening for our upcoming hearings. When it's time to present, I will announce those speakers for them to respond that they are present. Just to cover some general ground rules here, as mentioned, I will invite speakers on the agenda to make their presentation by stating their full name. And once their name is called, they'll be able to present. Each speaker will be asked to mute their phone or computer when not speaking and to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. Those responding will be asked to wait until the floor is yielded to them by the chair. Speakers who wish to respond to the comments of others will do so through the chair, taking care to identify themselves. Each vote taken by the board will be conducted by roll call. As mentioned, there will be public comments as a part of this meeting. So I will ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once I call on you to ask your question, you will be afforded 3 minutes for any comments. We do not anticipate executive session this evening. If there are technical difficulties, I will suspend the meeting while we make attempts to resolve any sort of issues. Any disconnections and reconnections of board members will be accurately reflected in the meeting minutes. So with that, I'd like to get started with the agenda here. The first hearing on our agenda it's a public hearing for 0 Bartlett Street, special permit per groundwater protection overlay district and special permit site plan approval. So I would like to call the presenters to join us. I am welcoming Rick Riccio, and he'll have to let me know if I pronounce Brian Mazur, Jason Braga, who I don't see, and Dan Quayle.
Actually, Carrie, those are the 400 Cedar Hill Street.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
That's okay. The Dave Robinson and Israel Lopez are the two main presenters for 0 Bartlett Street.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Well, that would have been a surprise to 400 Cedar Hill to be presenting on 301. Okay, let's get the right group in here then. Let's see. I have Israel Lopez, David Robinson, Douglas Landry, and Robert Najee. And let's see, does that take care of everybody? Kathy, did I forget anybody or leave anybody on by mistake from 400?
No, I believe for 0 Bartlett, I believe these are the 5 people that will be here tonight.
Okay, great. So welcome. I want to read quickly the public hearing notice for this hearing before we get started. In accordance with the provisions of MGL Chapter 48, Section 9, the Northborough Planning Board will hold a public hearing on June 9th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. to consider the special permit for a groundwater protection overlay district and special permit site plan approval application for 0 Bartlett Street, map 51, parcel 3A, and map 66, parcel 16, submitted by the Gutierrez Company for a 150,900 square foot distribution center industrial warehouse with on-site parking and associated site appurtenances. I think I said that incorrectly. Application and plans prepared by Allen and Major Associates, Inc. are on file at the town clerk's office and town planner's office and may be viewed on the planning department webpage. There's also the same notice that I just read at the beginning of the meeting pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order regarding the ability to conduct remote meetings, which has already been read. Additionally, the information on how to participate has been posted on the agenda. So you will find that there as well. With that, I would like to welcome the representatives of 0 Bartlett to make their presentation. And for anybody not speaking, if you wouldn't mind putting yourself on mute.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me. If you don't mind introducing yourselves by name as well, that would be great.
Yes, and if everyone can hear me, my name is Israel Lopez with the Gutierrez Company.
Yep. Oh, go ahead, Israel. Sorry.
Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead. Introduce yourself.
I'm Dave Robinson with Allen and Major Associates.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, members of the planning board and town staff. We began this process. I think we submitted our initial application to the board back in February and then got sidetracked, as the rest of the world did, by the coronavirus epidemic. So we're really excited and happy to be able to present this evening. And thank you all for being able to hear us tonight. I'm going to just make a couple of brief comments to introduce the project, and then I'll turn it over to Dave Robinson from Allen and Major Associates. The project tonight, if what we're proposing is a 150,000 square foot facility. It's located on Bartlett Street, adjacent to some of the other projects that we've developed along Bartlett Street. This project, just in terms of where it sits and how we envision it, is going to be the smallest of the facilities that have been built to date. So the second largest facility would be the one adjacent to it at 220,000 square feet. And so this one is smaller, and we think it's going to fit in nicely and kind of provide another opportunity for either distribution users or GMP users, life science users to come in. This facility is a little bit better sized for that type of use versus some of the larger distribution facilities that have more kind of logistics, more of a logistics focus to them. So that's what we envision. We haven't identified the user for the site yet. We would be back to the building department and with any other boards, should there be any changes that would warrant coming back for additional approvals. But I think we have been working diligently with the other town staff members to address many of the comments that we'd received through the Conservation Commission process, through the Design Review Board, and with the Groundwater Overlay District Committee. And so we've incorporated a lot of that feedback, and Dave can get into some of those details. But we are well underway with the permitting. Some of the other state permits that we'll need are a conservation and management permit, which we actually have obtained in working with the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Foundation. So we've obtained that permit already. We're working with the MWRA very closely. We've had numerous meetings with them to obtain an 8M permit, which we'll need to cross the aqueduct that bisects our site. And similarly with Design Review Board and with Groundwater Overlay Committee, we've addressed many of those comments. So with that, I think I'll just turn it over to Dave to provide some of the site design details regarding the project.
Yep, thank you, Israel, appreciate it. And if it's okay, is it all right for me to share my screen so we can see the color plans we've prepared?
Please do. Thank you.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. So just some background information about the project. The project is known as Parcel H. It's located right here on Bartlett Street. You may remember the Hayes G project, which has access to Hayes Memorial Drive, shown right here, heading north to south. That one was permitted and designed by Allen and Major Associates. I'm David Robinson with Allen and Major Associates, for the record. Additionally, 301 Bartlett down here was permitted and is currently constructed. And so we're moving on now to Parcel H, which has access to Bartlett Street. And you'll notice that there are basically two parcels. There's a lower parcel here, which was subdivided through the A&R process, and part of that is dedicated to the 301 Bartlett Street project. And this lot, smaller lot 2B, actually currently known as map 66, lot 16 on the Town of Northborough GIS, provides our access and frontage to Bartlett Street. We then cross this Wachusett Aqueduct, which is owned by the MWRA. As Israel mentioned, we are currently in the permitting process with them. And we provide access to the site over a raised berm here. So basically this Wachusett Aqueduct basically bisects our site from the lower parcel along Bartlett Street to the upper larger parcel where the main building is going to be. Now, it should be noted that this larger parcel was also subdivided through the A&R process from the Hayes G site, which is shaded here in lighter shading. So that's the location of the site. Moving on, this is a color presentation plan that we've put together. As Israel mentioned, it's a 150,900 square foot industrial or warehouse use building with a finished floor of 275. Up at the street on Bartlett Street, the elevations are around 290. So the building sits about 15 feet lower than the street, which will help to obscure approximately half of the building height. The site currently proposes 150 parking spots, which is allowed by right, and also meets all of the zoning requirements with regards to open space, lot coverage, lot area, lot frontage, and the front, rear, and side yard setbacks. We've gone through some pretty extensive permitting, as Israel mentioned. We've gone through the Design Review Board, the Groundwater Overlay Committee. We'll go through the Earthwork Board prior to breaking ground. We've made some really good headway, as Israel mentioned, with the NHESP in amending our conservation and management permit. We'll be preserving 13.2 acres in a conservation restriction. bringing the total between the three projects, Hayes G, 301, and Parcel H, the total conserved area to just north of 46 acres. As I mentioned, we're in the permitting process with MWRA to attain our 8M permit. And we've had 2 productive hearings with Conservation Commission. We've made several revisions to the plan, all of which improve the site. And our next Conservation Commission is scheduled for June 29th. You'll notice on this plan that there's a number of colored lines. These are buffers to resource areas on site. The green one is wetlands. This black one is the 100-foot wetland buffer. The limit of work is shown here in purple. And there's also floodplain on site, which we've addressed, and as well as groundwater overlay. We're in the groundwater 3 and groundwater 1 districts. So we've designed the site to meet all of these constraints. We don't need any variances with regards to wetland buffers for the local buffers. So I think that we've done a really good job of meeting the riverfront disturbances and laying out the site in a way that makes sense and respects all of those buffers. As for site plan design, we've incorporated a lot of plan changes based on feedback from other boards, such as the DPW, which was mostly related to, we're proposing a sewer force main along Bartlett Street to tie into a sewer manhole further down the street. We've gone through the process with DPW and Fred Litchfield to address a lot of those concerns about the force main. We've gotten comments back from engineering. We've submitted a report determining the base flood elevation and have gotten some positive feedback on that. As I've mentioned, we've gone through numerous ConsCom meetings and have updated the plans for their feedback. We've gone through the design review board and we updated the plans based on their feedback, kind of with regards to snow storage and landscaping, which they seem to like our landscaping plan. And we've also put together a wildlife habitat evaluation report, kind of looking at how we can best mitigate any impacts from us disturbing the 200-foot riverfront area. And that was prepared by Goddard Consulting. And we did submit that to the town. So I think that's kind of a good overview of the project and where we stand right now and the improvements that we've made to the site plans since we last submitted on Christmas Eve 2019. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to the committee and for comments.
Okay, before we have any board questions, Kathy, Fred, or Bob, would you like to speak to any of this? Fred, do you want to go through your report?
To unmute Fred.
Oh, you're still muted, Fred.
Sorry about that. David's shared screen blocked my unmute button, so I'm using the space key.
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to read the letter that I wrote reviewing the application or the groundwater letter first? Does it matter?
It doesn't matter, whatever you think is relevant.
Okay. The groundwater committee met on March 10th and reviewed the revised application and the plans recently submitted, or the plans that were submitted prior to the March 10th meeting were February 24th and operation and maintenance plan March 5th. The groundwater committee did indicate that since the applicant does not have a tenant and they did not have a list of chemicals, volumes, or types of materials to be stored on site, they're recommending any approval be granted with no storage of any chemicals and that they return to provide proper safeguards for the groundwater. The impervious cover calculation sheets are required from the applicant to be submitted so that the building department can have them on hand for any future development of the site. And there'll need to be one for each of the 2 parcels, as David has outlined, the 2 separate parcels separated by the aqueduct. I've requested that, and the groundwater committee recommended that 2 permeability tests be performed in each of the areas utilized for infiltration. and that no vehicle maintenance shall be performed on site. The washing of any tractor cabs or trailers shall be prohibited. The site shall be connected to town water and sewer as outlined on the plan, and the building shall be heated with natural gas. The dumpsters and/or their compactors shall be located within the truck dock area, and that the stormwater operation and maintenance plan revised March 5th shall be amended and include a sample inspection report and be made part of any approval. And the town engineer and the groundwater advisory committee shall be provided copies of the contract and invoices for all work and inspection performed. All material removed from the drainage system shall be disposed of properly off-site. And then there's a very long condition number 10 that talks about the requirements of the as-built plan, which is very standard in all of the letters that come from the groundwater committee and or my review.
Anything else?
I can go through my letter regarding the site plan if you like now, or you can, if there are any questions on the groundwater portion of my review, I'll answer them now.
Okay. And do any board members have questions for Fred at this time?
I do, Fred. Is there sewer on the street?
There's sewer up the street a little ways, and they are going to put a pump station and connect to it.
So how are they going to pull sewer in with the aqueduct?
Um,
Do you know how they plan on doing that?
I'll let David speak to that, but it is part of their plan.
I'm sorry, I guess I just don't understand the question. What do you mean, how are we going to pull sewer with the aqueduct?
I'm just curious. I didn't realize. So there's the aqueduct there. Can you just, are you sewer going down in front of the building as you enter it and you're coming over through?
Oh, okay, so where's the sewer line running?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, yep. So sewer exits the building, one here on the southwest side of the building, and another one here kind of right in this area near our utility room, which is outlined in gray right here. And it runs by gravity to a sewer pump station right here. And now this sewer pump station fills up with sewer from the gravity-fed building lines. When it gets to a certain elevation, that pump utilizes floats to kick on, similar to what we did at Hayes G, and it pumps sewer through a 4-inch PVC main, which we've discussed with the DPW, and they've let us know that our design is acceptable. And it pushes all the sewer down a 4-inch PVC out to Bartlett Street, and then we've submitted utility plans that show a plan and profile of the 2,600-foot-long run, which runs down Bartlett Street and ties into an existing sewer manhole near the Hillside projects. So it's very similar to what we did at Hayes G. At Hayes G, we had to relocate the existing sewer force main, which services the regional high school. And we also had a very similar pump station system in front of Hayes G, which pumped sewer down the 800-foot-long access drive and tied into Marlboro sewer. So we've basically used a very similar design, and it does cross through the aqueduct here. I've put together a plan and profile, which we are in the process of submitting to the MWRA, showing the relation of the lowest utilities which cross the aqueduct here. It should be noted that this is a berm, approximately 15 feet above the aqueduct. So we'll be using about 6 feet from finished grade to the bottom of our utilities to cross over the aqueduct and to service the building sewer.
So just to add a little bit to that, we performed a ground penetrating radar tests to locate the depth of the aqueduct within the aqueduct in that cut there, and determined that it was about 15 feet below the elevation of where that berm crosses through. And so the utilities that are going to cross through the access way will be about the utility that will be the lowest, buried the deepest in the ground, will still be about 8 feet above the aqueduct. And that's part of the plan and profile. That'll be shown in a plan and profile that we'll be providing to the MWRA, and we'll be using materials that they are comfortable with in terms of anything that's going to be put in that vicinity of the aqueduct.
Thank you. One more question. So could you just clarify, and I don't know if I got this right, the green dotted lines that go, and see from here, those are your open space, that is your wetlands, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And the black solid or the black dotted line is 100-year right
No,
there.
so this black dash line is
Yeah.
the 100-foot state buffer to the wetland. So if you took this green line and you offset it 100 feet,
Okay.
you would
Yeah,
have
got it.
this. So right, so it's the 100-foot buffer to the wetlands.
Okay. But the building is within that 100-foot buffer on the other side.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
correct. And that's why we had to file a notice of intent with the conservation and the DEP. So our conservation hearings are still ongoing. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from them. We've updated the plans accordingly. And we've also gone through an entire round of comments with the DEP. They had a bunch of good comments. We've updated the plans to reflect that. And so that's what triggers a notice of intent, is if any of your work is proposed to disturb this 100-foot buffer around the site, as clearly we are, we're required to submit a notice of intent to make sure that, you know, DEP and Concom is on board with our proposed development.
And do you feel comfortable sharing any of their concerns or your discussions, or you'd rather wait?
I think a lot of there was no real super significant comments. A lot of it was related to kind of the drainage and the way that we calculated our TSS removal and things like that. But there were no real show-stopping comments, and we did provide response letters to the Conservation Commission and DEP comments to the Concom and DEP as well, and CC'd each other on.
Carrie,
Thank
if I
you.
could, and Michelle, this might help you with that question also. Today, the conservation agent, Mia McDonald, who's been working very closely with Dave Robinson, just for tonight's purposes, just sent me an email saying that she has been closely working with Alan Majors on all the revisions that address the commission's concerns. Those included drainage, wildlife habitat, and lighting. Staff is satisfied with the revisions, that they have met all of the commission's concerns, and staff plans to recommend the issuance of the order of conditions at the next meeting, which is, I think as Dave had mentioned, which is June 29th.
Yep.
Now, Kathy, Mia had wanted some of the water to drain forward into the wetlands versus all off to the side. And you said that they're ready to issue the order of conditions. Has that been decided? Is some of the water going to run off towards the front into the wetlands?
I'll let Dave handle that. That again, that's completely under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. But I know that's probably the most recent item that Dave and Mia have worked out, and Mia's satisfied with what's being proposed. But I'll let Dave give the specifics or a summary of that, Dave, if you would.
Yep. So I guess just 50,000 yard view. Basically, the Conservation Commission had come to us and requested that we try and feed this sort of portion of the wetlands a little bit better. So we had a very good and productive conversation, myself, Israel, and Mia McDonald, last week, and we discussed how we were basically our response was twofold. First off was that based on the soil types and the infiltration rates, the soils that are right adjacent to the wetlands provide the most runoff to the wetlands. These are proposed to still remain as pervious landscaped areas, and they'll nicely feed this strip of wetland. So the existing drainage pattern has been maintained in the proposed conditions with regards to the lion's share of the runoff, which is this sliver right along the wetlands contributing to feeding the wetlands so that they stay wet in the next several decades. We also show a small swale in here, which contributes about a half an acre of impervious area to feed the wetlands. And lastly, we also, one of our latest drainage revisions shows a water quality unit here with a graded inlet and about 120-foot run. It discharges to a flared end section with a riprap apron for velocity dissipation. This just happens to discharge water into a natural ravine, which feeds this area right around flags 144 and 145, which is the highest elevation of the wetlands. And through these three different tactics, we feel that the Conservation Commission has kind of accepted this latest drainage design, and we've proven to them that our proposed drainage patterns do not significantly alter the runoff heading towards the wetlands under proposed conditions. And Mia seemed to be satisfied with that, but of course we'll explain that to the Conservation Commission on the June 29th hearing.
Okay, so those are changes since the last meeting.
For conservation?
Yep.
Yes. And
Okay.
those were submitted and incorporated into the June 5th plan set.
Okay.
Do you have additional questions, Amy, that you want to ask?
I was going to ask about the 15-foot berm. Now, I know, like, I walked the aqueduct the other day with my son just to scope this out. So people who walk along the aqueduct, which is now open for public access, they'd have to go up 15 feet and cross the driveway. Is that what's going to happen?
Yes, right. So, this is the aqueduct here. There's property line shown in black. So there's a natural, on this side, there's a nice natural kind of berm that just kind of gently slopes up. And this is our crosswalk right here. And then on this side, it's a little bit steeper, but conservation had discussed, potentially having an Eagle Scout project or something of that nature to install some non-structural stone steps to make it easier for people to climb this berm on this side, because it's really this side that's the issue. Currently, there's a little path shown here, and people walk along here just to make it easier to cross the berm.
So is that path going away? Is that the current path coming from the Stirrup Brook Trail?
Yes, what we discussed with conservation was keeping, so this is kind of a cheater path that people use. Technically, the path should be in the aqueduct here, but because it's steep here, people tend to go around that and use this path, which is technically on our project site. They should be staying in the aqueduct here. So that's what is proposed right now with the crosswalk here across the driveway.
Okay, so the cheater path is going away and there are going to be stairs.
Potentially, that's something that we are discussing with the Conservation Commission, and as a subcommittee to the Conservation Commission, there's the Northborough Trails Committee, which would probably have more of a hand in how that is handled. But from the feedback that we've gotten from Conservation, they're satisfied with our current layout.
Okay. Let me see if I had any other questions. For the site in the front, the map 6616,
Yes.
is anything going to be developed there in the future? Like, it is a nice buffer between the road and the new warehouse. Will that stay as a buffer, or do you plan on developing that land?
So we don't currently have any plans to develop that site. We need to evaluate the constraints on that site. As you can see with the green line there, there is some wetland currently on that site. And so we currently don't have any plans to develop that parcel. It would be a much smaller parcel than anything else that we've developed.
Right. Do you think you'd ever be open to a conservation restriction there? Because it is the trail and it does buffer the building.
At this point, we probably wouldn't want to put a restriction on the entry and the frontage to the site. We just don't know what kind of issues, if any, that would ever cause regarding access. If we ever needed additional access. We have contributed, I think it was 46 acres already with all of the adjacent sites. In fact, we've contributed so much conservation land that the NHESP has given us credit for future development that we could use elsewhere if we had a site with a similar endangered species, because we've contributed more than what their guidelines provide.
Okay, I read the Mass Wildlife letter, and they didn't render a final decision yet, but have they rendered a final decision since February?
The Natural Heritage has provided an amended conservation and management permit. Yes, so we did enter into a conservation restriction agreement with them for the 13 acres that are going to be conserved as part of this development. And then we amended the existing conservation and management permit, which governs all of the conservation land.
Okay, so you received a new letter since February 25th saying that
We did, and
that they have their final decision.
Yes, they did, and we provided a copy of that to the conservation, to Mia McDonald and the Conservation Commission.
Oh, okay. All right, I'd like to get a copy of that too.
Yes.
Also, let's see, how many feet into groundwater 1 did the driveway go? Your access way. Your access way crosses over groundwater 1.
Yeah,
I was just wondering how many feet. I think the whole groundwater 1 section is about 367 feet. I was looking at the GIS maps, but I didn't have, I wasn't sure how far the driveway was.
Yep, so I guess I can answer that. The blue line here, shown here, is the barrier between groundwater 3 and groundwater 1. This is a 50-foot offset, and as you can see, it's just past that 50-foot. But it was, mentioned to us by during our groundwater hearing that was an acceptable use of the 50-foot offset rule for the groundwater regulations.
So you think it's about between 60 and 80 feet versus 50?
Just north of 50. I don't have that exact figure. I don't have that exact number on me.
Okay. Let's see. When you made the decision to split the parcel in the front, originally the decision from 2008 for the 301 Bartlett used the whole 31 acres, and you split that off. I'm not sure when that decision was made, and I'm hoping that once it got split, you're still meeting all the requirements for 301, like the impervious and all the groundwater requirements. Do you know what year that lot was split due to A&R?
I believe it was 2018.
Okay, so it was before you applied for the 301?
No, it was
decision?
part of that. It was part of that process. It was part of the 301 decision. Yes.
So like Fred, do all the groundwater, it all is the same for 301? It all met the requirements because it was split before the decision was made?
Yes, that was a condition of approving the A&R.
Okay, it just, yep. Some of the papers I have mention 301, some mention different lots. So I was trying to figure it out, when it split, why it split, and just want to make sure that it still covers all the requirements that they have to meet.
It does.
Okay. Now, I know we haven't talked about the fire department yet. but did they have any problems that they couldn't get all the way around the building? I noticed 301, there's parking in the back, so you can drive in and go all the way around. But with this building, you can't get around to the back with a fire truck. And I don't think our ladder truck would reach all the way across the building. Was the fire chief okay with that?
Yep, so we went into the Northborough Fire Department early in the early in the process before we even submitted for our very first submission back in December. And we met with the fire chief, and he brought up the same concern that you have. Typically, you want to see 3 sides of access to the building. So we have 1 and 2 covered, but we had a narrower path here, which was only about 8 feet wide. And so he requested that we widen this 3rd access side up to 24 feet wide, which we show a minimum of 24 feet from the face of the building to the guardrail. There's a guardrail proposed along this slope here. And that is so that the fire truck can get in there, put its feet down, get set, and do what it needs to do. And that was acceptable to the fire chief, I believe. Our revision, as we didn't receive any comments after we had resubmitted that change to him.
Kathy, could we double check with him? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, he's all set. I've had several conversations with him, and then he also received a copy of the revised site plans.
Yeah, I just want, in the past, it was always a concern about getting to the back of the building.
Which was a different fire chief. So this fire chief does it a little bit differently and is not requiring or requesting access around 4 sides of the building.
Also, this building is proposed to be sprinkled, and it also has one of the requests of the DPW was to provide separate domestic and fire water lines, which we did in this revised plan. So if we need to shut the domestic water off, the 10-inch fire service line will still be in use to sprinkle the building, which is very helpful in the event of a fire.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to
Also-
ask, oh, sorry, I was just going to
sure.
see if Millie or Anthony had any additional questions. Do you have one more question?
I have a
I don't want to
couple.
cut you off.
I have a whole list.
Well, I think we're limited with time tonight in general, so I want to make sure we get through all our applications. So I'm just quickly, why don't I check to see if any of the board members have questions, see if we have any public comments, and then swing back around if we have extra time.
Sure.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Okay, Anthony, do you have any comments that you want to make or questions that you have?
I'm sorry, was lighting discussed in here or about any lighting studies or anything to that matter?
I can respond to that first, if you'd like. I'll just bring in the comments from the Design Review Committee. You don't have a letter from the Design Review Committee because everything that the Design Review Committee discussed with the applicant was revised through the process. And so the final plan that the Design Review Committee reviewed met all of their concerns. And basically the two, and Michelle can add in here too, but ultimately the 2 biggest concerns or comments from the Design Review Committee had to do with snow storage, which David did address at the beginning of his presentation, and then the lighting on the site, and specifically it was the lighting on Bartlett Street that, as is commonly heard from Michelle as chair of the Design Review Committee, looking for streetlights on Bartlett Street. And there is still the town policy about no new streetlights on any public road. But the applicant in this particular case did add a streetlight on their own property as close to the intersection of their driveway and Bartlett Street as they could get. The rest of the lighting, as part of the site plan package and then as part of the Design Review Committee review, the lighting plan was reviewed. There is no spillage off of the site, and the lighting as proposed, actually some of it, this was above and beyond that anything is there's nothing like this required in our bylaw, but the applicant did meet some of the what's called dark sky standards in Massachusetts. And again, if you have specific questions about that, David could address those. But so the lighting of the site meets the Northborough zoning bylaw and the planning board rules and regulations as far as lighting. And there was the additional street light that is not required, but the applicant did address that per the request of the design review committee.
Okay. And so in terms of mass wildlife or conservation, no, they had no concerns about lighting considering the proximity to wildlife areas?
I'll take that, Dave, and you can chime in. They did raise that as a concern, and we did incorporate an analysis or a review by our wildlife habitat consultant in their report, in their wildlife habitat evaluation report, which we've submitted to Mia McDonald, and she has reviewed and is recommending approval of it. The finding in the report is that the amount of light and the downlighting and the shielding of the lighting that is being provided, so essentially along the rear of the building, if you will, the side that faces Stirrup Brook, that side is only going to have wall-mounted lights in kind of the minimal locations as required for security. But that lighting was not found by our wildlife consultant. And they did a search of any reports that they could find, and they couldn't find any evidence that that lighting would be detrimental to the wildlife in this particular location. And so it was their finding that there would be no negative impact to wildlife.
Okay. And in terms of, since you don't have a tenant, we don't really know what kind of hours of operation there somebody would be looking to do at this point.
Correct, but more than likely it would be standard, Monday through Friday, maybe limited operations on the weekends, but no operations beyond 5 or 6 o'clock, or whatever the requirement is with respect to hours of operation.
Okay, and I know we're short on time here, but could you? There was a number of different organizations, committees, boards, whatever, that still were kind of pending approval. Can you just list those off again? I don't know if I got them all.
Sure. So the MWRA will be issuing an 8M permit for the aqueduct crossing. The Mass Historic Commission, because the aqueduct is a linear historic district, they will be providing a letter. It's not a formal approval, but they will be opining on whether there's any negative impact to that linear historic district. We've been in contact with them, and they've previewed the plan and have indicated that they don't have any concerns about it, but they do want to see the final plan, so we'll provide those to them. The Earthwork Board, which will need approval from the Earthwork Board, and we'll seek that once we've identified a tenant, prior to breaking ground. I think those are the only three, other than the Conservation Commission.
Okay, excellent. Carrie, I have no more questions.
Millie, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
Yeah, I have just 2 questions. Just looking at sort of what you anticipate for traffic or cars, that's a left-hand turn coming on Bartlett Street from the direction that about 75% of the traffic will be coming from. Is there a double lane, or do you anticipate a need for a left-hand turn lane there, or is that road wide enough?
We actually have Rob Nagy from VHB. If he's still on the line, I'll let him respond to that one.
Yes, I am. Rob Nagy with VHB on the line. The Bartlett Street cross section is pretty wide out there, so there's and the volume that we're expecting to be coming in and out of this driveway, particularly as it comes from the west or that would need to make a left turn into the driveway is pretty minor. We're talking probably about 20 to 25 cars at most and trucks during the peak periods. So the existing cross section out there should be able to handle without any real issue the delays that would cause. One of the recommendations that we did make in our study, and I think Fred picked up on it in his memo, is that the exiting driveway should represent a wider than normal driveway and or separate right and left turn lanes for any traffic that is on the driveway.
Okay.
So I suspect that'll be part of something that gets worked into this plan as well. But I don't, given the use and the low intensity use of a warehouse, I don't see that being traffic issues being a big issue with the driveway operations.
Okay. Another quick question. I don't know if you have any design on the roof style. Is that a pitched roof or is it a flat roof? And does that have an impact on where the water goes when it's wetlands or where it might be draining towards?
Yep, so that's a good question. So the roof style, very similar to other projects like Hayes G and 301, is higher in the back here, and it slopes down slightly to the front here. There's a very large 24-inch diameter pipe with roof drain headings evenly spaced throughout it. So all of the water drains to the front of the building, and Gutierrez's style is to typically have the water drain towards the truck loading area. And then it's funneled through a 24-inch pipe to this very large detention basin in the back. And the roof style, as shown on this rendering here, is sort of very similar to what you've seen other projects Gutierrez has put in around town. Very clean, very nice looking, same kind of materials, colors, and same kind of flat roof, which pitches towards the truck dock side here.
Okay. That's all I have, actually.
Okay, Amy, did you have additional questions?
Well, I was just thinking of the roof when she said that. Will the roof be able to hold solar panels if needed in the future? Would it support solar?
Yes.
Okay. Just because I know some of the industrial design guidelines, they talk about solar, and I'm not saying that you have to put it on, but we'd like the buildings to support it if you wanted to do in the future.
Yes, that's something that we incorporate into all of our newer buildings.
Okay, so all the ones on Bartlett could support it?
Yes.
Okay.
Interesting.
I think I'm all, I have a list, but I'll go through it after. I'm not ready right now for the next one.
Okay, Michelle, do we have a letter from design review or no letter?
No, Carrie, what I had mentioned before was there isn't a specific letter from design review because the applicant met everything and incorporated into the final plan. So there wasn't anything outstanding that needed to be addressed from design review.
Okay.
I actually thought that we had done a review of it and submitted it to the planning board, but that was 6 months ago. So I also wanted to mention that in Kathy's email that was sent to us, when I went to Dave Robinson's and clicked on the link, it's no longer there. So I was just trying to get the link where it had all of the summaries and all the letters to, and I can't find it on the town's website either. So I don't know, Kathy, where is it on the planning department's website?
Yep, the link was fixed this morning, and so the link is operable, and everything that's in the file is under the planning board meeting materials on the planning webpage.
Okay, just said to go to planning, but okay, that makes sense. My only questions are with regards to, I thought we talked about and agreed that there would be signage at the end of the roadway, end of the driveway, where we'd ask trucks to turn right to use the street to go out to 290 versus going to Bartlett Street to Route 20. Did we agree to that, or was that left, as a consideration for this meeting?
As far as design review, Michelle, we had talked about that that could be made as it has been in other decisions, other planning board site plan decisions, that could be one of the conditions that is, I mean, you can't stop someone from using a public street, but the suggestion can be made as part of the site plan review, as we've done in other, other Bartlett Street properties, that that the preference is for all of the truck traffic that doesn't have any business or deliveries, in the center of town, or in Northborough, that the truck traffic would be directed to use either Lyman Street or Bartlett onto Hayes Memorial out to 495 that way.
Yeah, or even the Route 20 corridor, right? But okay, I think that should be a condition. And then I remember the design review talking about exit doors in the back of the building. And you said that the fire chief said that they were fine with not having the trucks be able to have. Is there any doors in the back of the building?
So Israel, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that what they typically do on these style buildings is they have what are called future knockouts, which are locations where you could install doors in the back if the tenants wanted them, I believe. But it would be a question for the architect, but I don't think that there's any currently proposed exit doors at the rear. Israel, is that correct?
That's correct, but we would be going back to the building department once we identified a tenant and came up with the final layout for the plan. For example, how much space is going to be office. There'll be some, small office component. Obviously, that'll have to have an exit door. And then there are minimum distances for fire egress that we'll have to meet. So kind of that level of detail will incorporate in the final plan that we submit. But yes, the panels, the precast concrete panels that are used for the wall construction have punch outs that can be knocked out, and you can essentially pop a door in any panel if you wanted to.
Yeah, I think I remember that discussion with Dave Veron, who's on the design review committee, where we talked about if someone needs to have an emergency exit out of the back of the building, were there doors there? And then again, was there snow removal up against the doors? I think he has a tendency to do, his business does a lot of those bigger buildings around there, and he was just asking about snow removal around the back of the building.
And we've widened out the back of the building access pathway. I believe it was 8 feet, and Dave, you can tell me what it is exactly today, but I know it's wider than that to provide ease of access from a snow removal standpoint back there.
Yep, it's between 15 and 20 feet now. So you've got 24 feet over here for the fire access, and then it varies along the back with a minimum of 15 feet. And I think that the tightest spot is right here. That's about 15 feet because we're fairly close to the wetlands and have a little slope here. So it's significantly wider than what we proposed out at Hayes G, what we installed and constructed out at Hayes G. So there is good access along the rear of this building since it is a longer building.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. This is a public hearing. I wanted to invite the public to ask any questions if they have it. And I want to remind you, if you're calling in from a telephone, you'll need to press *9 in order to raise your hand. That's how I'll know that you'd like to be recognized. And as recognized, you just need to state your name and address, and then your question. Is there anybody attending the meeting tonight that would like to ask a question or have a comment? Okay. Just going to give it a few seconds in case anybody's trying to dial. Okay, great. It doesn't look like there are any public comments or questions at this time. A couple things from me. I received a few different, in reading a few of these letters, Mia specifically outlined some lighting requirements that she was looking for. that's difficult for me to understand, not being an expert in it. I'd really want to understand more from her about what this entails, why we want it, how this is adequate. Overall, I want more from me in general. This is an area of a lot of wildlife. A lot of residents are very sensitive to what goes on and what's built here, and they see these warehouses go up, and they have a lot of questions about it, and they want to know the impact on wildlife, and they want to know if we've thought about, what do lights do, what do noise do, have we considered the wetlands, and I'd like to be able to answer those questions confidently, that I understood what we were voting on before I actually voted on it. A few other things I'd be interested in. Any sort of letters we're missing or permits we're missing. Design review, if there's any updated letters, or if the chief has any letters. If the Mass Historic Commission submits a letter, MWRA submits something, NHESP, their copy of their letter. A lot of different things. I don't feel like I have a full picture of this plan that I'd like to see personally. I wouldn't mind doing a site walk to really get a feel for what's going on in that aqueduct there, the impact of that driveway. I'd also question about the special permit for the 50 feet. Does that have the same parameters of any special permit, or is that different number of different parameters for that special permit? Kathy?
Well, all special permits go by that criteria. But this specific special permit is written into the groundwater bylaw, allowing the 50 feet leeway, and under the jurisdiction of the Groundwater Advisory Committee. So I think Fred referenced that in his letter. Fred,
Yes, I see that, but does the planning board issue? The planning board is the special permit granting authority on that?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
So
yep,
I
you
don't
are.
have any evidence or letter about how it fits the criteria, I guess. I just have that we want to extend 50 feet or plus, even more than 50 feet in groundwater. But I don't have any real information on that special permit, or how I am to judge how I'm to make a decision that that's an appropriate special permit.
So you'd like to have that from the applicant as
Yes,
to
just
how they
information on
feel?
how it fits the criteria for a special permit. Is it because, is there no other choice? Is there, I don't want to be quick to let groundwater one use because we didn't look at other options, or we just figured, oh, that's easy, we'll just get a special permit. I want to make sure that it equates to not the severity, but to the gravity of what's being asked. We're asking to build on groundwater one when our bylaws aren't really allowing this use on groundwater one. So those are the kind of things that I'm interested in. I don't know if we, I think there's a conservation meeting on the 29th. I'd be interested if Mia would be open to coming to a planning board meeting and really talking more to us about that area of town specifically. I think we could all benefit from the information so we can make informed decisions, if that's possible, if we'd be able to ask her to kind of walk through some of her recommendations and these letters so we have a good understanding.
Well, I think we need to be cognizant of the two different boards' authorities, and the Conservation Commission has an open hearing that, of course, any member of the planning board could attend on June 29th. But the conservation issues are just that under the Wetlands Protection Act, and then the planning board's jurisdiction is under the site plan review process and the special permit. So I read Mia's email, which I can forward to all of you, or have her elaborate more if you would like.
Yeah, I'm not looking to presume authority over her jurisdiction. I just want to understand what those discussions are and what their concerns are, so that if we need to put conditions on the site plan, I'd like to have context of what that should be. What should we be doing for this site? Looking to their expertise, not looking to override their expertise in any way, really just trying to understand what they think we should know, or what some condition, why these conditions should be there. Just so that I have a better understanding. I don't know if other board members feel differently. It's not up to just me. From the board.
I mean, I think it's important. I hear what you're saying. I've attended all the Conservation Commission meetings for this. And what I found interesting is even though we are two separate boards, at one point they said, has the planning board closed this application yet? Because they did want to send us a memo, which they did. But I find if we close our hearing too prematurely, they might have extra information to give us, because they did that night and they asked, did the planning board close it? So I think it's in our best interest to leave it open, because they might have some other concerns. And if we close it, it would be too late. And the applicant can't start until all of these criteria has been met. So I don't feel it would postpone the starting of this process at all, because they still have a lot of letters to get, and they still have to get the conservation letter. So I think if we continued it to July, which would be right after the conservation, I don't think it would cause any harm. But that's just my opinion.
Any other comments?
I mean, if I may, I certainly don't want to presume to, tell the planning board its job.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just looking for comments for the board, right? I'm trying to gauge
Okay.
interest in
Sorry.
continuing the hearing. Just if I could
Okay.
hear from Michelle or Anthony or Millie first.
So I do think I tend to agree with Amy that we're not really going to be stalling the whole process by more than if it's a week or two or whatever it may be. But to have a full picture, I think, is best for every board and for everyone.
Millie or Michelle, any thoughts?
I don't see the harm in having more information on that, on what Amy's talking about.
Michelle, did I lose you?
No, I'm here. I agree.
Okay. All right. Israel, go right ahead.
No, I was just going to make the comment that I completely understand wanting to get more information. I just wanted to reiterate the point that all of the comments that the staff, the conservation staff has made to us, we've incorporated. And so what you're seeing in terms of this plan is reflective of all of their comments, all of the conditions. We've worked quite extensively with them to tweak the plan and make the changes. And I think it's all reflected currently, but I understand what you're requesting. So.
Okay. All right. Why don't is there a motion to continue the hearing until, let's see, we don't have a July meeting set yet, so that'll be a problem.
Carrie, can I just ask, before you continue the hearing, can we just go over what it is that you're all looking for, so that the applicant knows,
Yes.
so that they can prepare that? And then the meeting which I'm anticipating you would continue this to, is your schedule in July would be the 7th. Your standard schedule would be the 7th and the 21st. And so that those nights are reserved for the planning board. There's only one webinar license in order to run these public hearings. So we have to be very careful about the dates that we pick, and the 7th and the 21st are specifically for the planning board.
Okay. That makes sense. So I think, I guess specifically, I would just want to see any sort of letters or memos that we don't already have that have been referenced at the meeting, or anything that comes in, any sort of pending letters that are coming in that we haven't seen yet. There's a wildlife habitation report. I don't know if we had that. If we have that or not.
That was part of, it wasn't something that was submitted to the planning board. It was a requirement from the Conservation Commission. So it's in the Conservation Commission's file, but I mean, I can certainly forward that to folks if they want to see the wildlife study.
Yeah, I mean, so that's not a requirement, I suppose, if it's just part of the other decision, but just anything that we have on file, access. If we could
Carrie,
do
I
a
just-
site walk, I don't know if other members are interested. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about anyone else. It's going in and out for me, but I don't know if anyone else is having that problem. Fred is too.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, I can. It's just, it was cutting out a little bit there for a moment.
Okay. It was basically just any pending letters or letters we don't have, or things that were said in passing, but we don't actually have any letters on file for, things like that. Let's see. Oh, a site walk. If we could do a site, I'd be interested in a site walk. I don't know if other members are interested.
I would be.
I'll do it.
Yeah, I would be.
If we could do a site walk, and let's see. I think that's probably it. Basically just any materials you don't have. Oh, and anything related to the special permit that would satisfy the criteria of a special permit.
So as far as the site walk, Carrie, do you want to do that with the applicant? And we can talk about that now as far as arranging that.
Yeah, I think that would make sense if that's possible.
And I think Mia too, if we could.
I actually had a couple questions with the memo that came from Mia and Conservation. They talked about light shields, and I know they answered the question that there'll be wall lights and they'll be facing down, but they also said to select the appropriate watt bulbs and lighting with warmer or less tones. I didn't know if Mia, like, I'm not a lighting expert and I'm not a dark skies expert, but I'd like to just ask Mia if she has recommendations for what she means, like what is the appropriate watt bulb and which bulb she wants us to use to meet the dark skies.
Yep.
If I can,
Sure.
Mia is not a lighting expert. She's the first to tell you that. She's a conservation agent.
Yep.
And it was the Conservation Commission. Some of the members had questions about lighting. So I think probably David or Israel can answer that. It's not really appropriate for Mia. She doesn't have any authority on that subject, and she'll be the first to tell you that.
Do we have any paperwork on dark skies? Like, are those certain regulations that would have a listing?
Yep. So basically, first of all, I'll start off in that once we got that memo, we revised our photometrics and lighting plan to address those concerns, particularly with regards to warm lighting. And I have a really nice graphic I could probably share for next time that kind of shows the different tones of lighting. So we did revise our photometrics and lighting plans. The manufacturer that we use, Cree, the particular lights that we use, and that they're the same LED lights that were installed at Hayes G. They are dark sky friendly. And we also meet all of the requirements of the Northborough lighting regulations from the zoning bylaw. So we've kind of done a lot of that work on the lighting front already, and have incorporated that into our photometrics plan, which was incorporated in both the February and June submissions. But you're more than welcome to discuss with Mia kind of how we've addressed those.
Okay, so I think if we do a deeper dive into it, so I guess what it sounds like we're saying is whatever you're presenting is all well and good, but none of us are light experts. So how are we to have the expertise to know that these are these are in line with the NHESP wildlife best biologist recommendations? Is that something? Is there? Yeah.
Oh, so yeah. So what the and you'll see this in the report, but what the wildlife report indicates is that there is no negative impact from lighting. They don't really specify parameters by which certain lights could be harmful and others not. What they're saying is that the types of wildlife that are found in insects and small animals that are in that particular location are not negatively impacted. So that's their finding. In terms of the lighting itself, and I want to correct Dave a little bit in terms of what he mentioned about lighting. We didn't really revise the lighting plan as we submitted was a very good lighting plan. It was consistent with the type of lighting which we had used in the other approved locations, which was already following dark sky principles. I think the one thing that we did tweak was, and I don't want to get too technical about it, but Dave and A&M has a lighting expert which they consulted, and they, I think, adjusted the lumens of one of the type of bulbs that we're proposing to use in this site versus the other sites, so that it's a slight bit warmer than the lighting that was used. The lighting that was used was also totally dark sky compliant in terms of the fixtures themselves. We're going to use the same fixtures here, but there is a range even within the parameters of dark sky that qualify as warm versus cool. It's on a spectrum, which you've probably seen at Home Depot, and it kind of goes on a spectrum. So I think we nudged one of the types of bulbs to be a little bit warmer. But I think all of that to say that the lighting that we're using follows dark sky guidelines. It's what we've used, and we propose to use the same.
Okay, that's good to know. But I will say that in this memo from Conservation, it notes that other species such as turtles, butterflies, and moss may be affected. So it doesn't seem like it's not going to impact them at all. We're just going to implement dark sky lighting principles to mitigate impact.
Well, that was their comment letter before we did the study and had the finding from the study. I think that was just their initial question to posed to us.
Okay.
Which we then had our wildlife consultant address.
Okay.
Carrie, can I suggest that given that it's 10 of 8,
Yes.
that perhaps we, through an email, we can arrange with Dave Robinson and or with Israel Lopez the site visit for all of you, and that you end up, continuing this to the July 7th meeting, and we just need to pick a time for that.
Okay, so why don't we do that? Let's see, we have, I think, going to be starting our meetings about 6:30. Does that, for board members, does 6:30 work as a time to start our meetings, or preferred?
Works for me.
Good for me.
Millie and Michelle?
Works for me.
Michelle, does that work?
Or 6? I mean, does it help to start just that little bit earlier, or?
That day, if I could just mention, that day I'm actually not here. So all of you could meet without me, but I'm not here on the 7th. I'm actually not around on that day.
Well, it's a special permit, so we need a supermajority. So
it'd either have to wait to the 21st, or it's a vacation day for me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So if we started, is 6 or 6:30 a better time?
On the 21st or on the 7th?
On the 21st.
That does not matter to me.
Doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter to me.
I'd prefer to start at 6.
Okay, Kathy, does that work with our licensing or whatever we need?
Sorry, to do it on the 21st? Yes, we have the 21st.
Okay, and for the team that would be presenting, does that day work for you as well?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so is there a motion to continue the public hearing for 0 Bartlett Street special permit per groundwater protection overlay district bylaw and special permit site plan approval to July 21st at 6 p.m.?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay, roll call. So I will do a roll call for this vote, for this motion. Anthony, please indicate if you are voting aye or nay. Anthony?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Millie?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna shift some gears here. Okay, I need to switch over our participants. So I'm going to just need a minute here. Okay, now I'm inviting the right crew in this time. So Rich Riccio is joining us to represent 400 Cedar. Brian Mazar. Oops, I don't see Jason Braga. And Dan Quayle. Okay, so welcome. I don't know if, is Jason Braga still joining us from the team?
I think he has a conflict tonight.
Oh, he's not coming. Okay. Okay. All right, great. So I just need to read a public notice before we get started here. Okay. In accordance with section 703050 site plan approval of the Northborough zoning bylaw, the Northborough Planning Board will hold a public meeting on June 9th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. to consider the site plan approval application of New England FC for a proposed indoor and outdoor soccer facility with supporting office space located at 400 Cedar Hill Street, map 67, parcel 4. The applicant is proposing to construct 2 synthetic turf athletic fields. One field, approximately 175 feet by 230 feet, will be enclosed in a building, and one field, approximately 175 feet by 250 feet, will be outdoors. Plans prepared by Field Engineering Co. Incorporated are on file at the town clerk's office and town planner's office and may be viewed on the planning department webpage. The next piece of this is the same information that I read at the beginning of the meeting regarding Governor Baker's order allowing us to have this this remote meeting. The information for public comment, for people of the public to participate, is included on the agenda. This is actually not a public hearing, but public comments will be accepted. Okay, who is giving the presentation this evening?
That will be me, Rich Riccio from Field Engineering.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. If I could, I'm going to share my screen here. This is a presentation plan we've prepared. This is has the public meeting notice mentioned. Proposed indoor-outdoor soccer facility located at 400 Cedar Hill Street. Basically at the intersection of Cedar Hill and Bartlett Street. Very, very close to the Marlborough town line. We're proposing a proposed building, approximately 50,000 square feet. Just under 10,000 square feet of that building would be offices, meeting space, and workout rooms, and the restroom facilities. And then the remaining portion of the building would be a turfed soccer field a 9v9 field, youth soccer field, roughly half of a full-size field. The building itself would be tied into water and sewer utilities available in the street. Also, gas and electric utilities within Cedar Hill Street. The outdoor field is located in the central portion of the site. And that is, once again, another 9v9 field, which is roughly half the size of a full-size field, fenced in with two lighting poles to light the fields with Musco lighting, which is very typical for these athletic fields, directs the light down onto the fields itself with very little spillover. There are two sets of bleachers that will be proposed between the building and the field in these concrete areas here. The parking lot has, the design of the parking lot is developed a bit from our original plan and discussions with the design review committee and conservation. Our original proposal had 119 spaces. We're able to increase that to 129 spaces of paved parking. An additional change which has been presented in the most recent plans is we've made this access point closer to Bartlett an entry only, and we are directing all the exiting traffic to this curb cut here as far from the Bartlett Street intersection as we could. Drainage on the facility, the building itself, the runoff will shed in both directions to the sides of the building and be collected within a crushed stone infiltration trench, which will also have perforated pipe directing the runoff to a large infiltration basin in this location here. This portion of the parking lot will flow through a water quality inlet for pre-treatment prior to flowing through a piping system to this infiltration basin as well. And the front portion of the parking will flow through a water quality inlet to an infiltration basin located here. The field itself, as I mentioned, is an artificial turf, very permeable surface. We'll have a crushed stone bed underneath it to promote infiltration of the runoff that hits the field itself. That will be equipped with overflow piping on either side of the field that would tie into this basin in the event that the stone bed was overwhelmed. As the plan itself has gone through, we went through 3 meetings with the design review committee. The main focus on those meetings was initially on the parking, which this plan represents the changes we've made through that process. Also, landscaping. We did a number of revisions to the landscaping plan, which I can show the board in a second. And also the discussion on the building itself, what it would look like. And we do have some presentation slides for that as well. And we have the architect, Dan Quayle, on as well. He could briefly talk about the features of the building. Another issue we discussed with the design review committee was safety, emergency access, following the receipt of the initial comment letter from the fire chief. I sat down with the fire chief and with your building inspector, and we reviewed the access and egress points of the building and the turning movements for the ladder truck to get into the building. And the latest plan satisfied his requirements. We do have an open public hearing with the Conservation Commission, which will take place on June 29th. We would have closed most likely at the last meeting, but we didn't have a DEP file number. So that ended up getting continued. And then, as we all know, things changed with the pandemic and all. And now we're going to the commission on the 29th to hopefully close out their discussions. Just quickly, I do have the emergency access plan, which we had submitted to the board and to the fire chief. These lines here represent the turning movements of a ladder truck coming onto the site, going around the parking. Also being able to access the field itself to be able to provide emergency services for the building. The building has a drive-in door here, which would allow an ambulance to come in if there was ever any need to access the field itself. And these hatched areas are areas that will need to be cleared of snow during any storm events to maintain access to the building. And then just briefly, this is the landscaping plan that we've developed following a number of the discussions with the design review board. You'll see a comment letter from them with regards to the addition of shade trees on the parcel. We've proposed, it's actually, the table says 22, but it's actually 24 trees and 27 shrubs on the property to beautify the front of it, make up for some of the lost trees from the construction of the site. We did a detailed landscaping plan of the front entrance as well, which I believe satisfied the members of the design review committee. Finally, just briefly, we do have a photometric plan for the lighting here. The field is in the middle here. There's the two P1 and P2 represent the two pole lights that would illuminate the field. And then we have P3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, which is 6 poles to illuminate the parking areas. I just wanted to show this photometric to show that there's no spillover of lighting off the property. It also doesn't spill over into the wetland system in this area here, or there's a wetland that runs through the aqueduct in this area here. I'm gonna put your presentation up if you wanted to just briefly go over the features of the building. I think that would be helpful.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, you can, okay. All right, the structure of the building is a steel frame structure, fabric wrapped. So the main area for the court, the interior field and the practice area, which is up front, is a fabric wrapped structure. And then the front of the building itself is steel framed, and it's got a fiber cement panel system on it. And that houses things like the conference room, the training room, the locker facilities, the main lobby, and the small concession area and the store. So we've got a few different views that we've shown. These aerial views give you an idea of the overall build out of the site. The structure itself, the main fabric wrapped structure, it will have 2 colors of the vinyl PVC fabric. The lower band up to about 12 feet or so is a dark navy, and then the top color over on the roof itself it shows up as white here, but it's actually a light gray fabric that was recommended. Along the front of the building, which is the more traditionally built structure, we've got a fiber. Yep, that's a little better. Thank you. Fiber cement panels, the Nichi-Ha panel. It's essentially a rain screen panel. They're 18 inches high by 6 feet long. We've got a couple of different colors. The main box is a gray stack bond panel, and then around the front entrance, they also make a version. Again, it's an 18 by 6 foot long panel, but it has a brick veneer look to it. We've brought that up a little bit higher than the main roof. It also helps to screen slightly the mechanical rooftop units that are on the roof. We've tried to keep those mechanical units as close to the gable and face. If you can see that, you can barely see a portion of one there. And then we've incorporated sort of the corporate logos, if you will, of the football club. And there's 2 signs, which 2 site signs, which Rich maybe can go back and show. But they're Rich down at the bottom. There's one graphic on the actual building, you know, the front main entrance, soccer training center, and then there's two of these pedestal signs out by each of the entrances onto the site.
One, yes, correct. The ground sign here and here. That, Dan, are you all set?
I think so. I mean, that's the bulk of what we have for the building itself.
Correct. With that, and open it up to questions from the board.
I'm unmuted. Okay, any questions from board members?
I have some questions. As far as, did this already go through the ZBA? Has this been approved through their process yet?
There's no
This,
application.
yeah, this project itself is exempt from zoning with regards to the use. The football club is a nonprofit club, and under the Dover Amendment for the zoning, the only permitting requirement was is the site plan approval. Just to follow up a little bit more, the site is located in the groundwater area 3. And while the groundwater committee was not required due to the Dover Amendment, we did design to the requirements of the bylaw with regards to the groundwater regulations.
Can I ask what actually made it exempt? I mean, the Dover requirement is for educational, agricultural, and religious, and I'm not sure where this fits in. Can you explain to me how that qualifies for the Dover exempt requirement?
There is documentation that both the football club had provided, and I believe the building inspector had concurred with that the nonprofit club aspect of this did fall under the Dover Amendment.
So it's basically the building inspector said that this would be exempt? Whoops, did I lose something?
What's happening? Are we losing the presentation?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Am I still sharing?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I have some questions on why it fits the Dover Amendment, because, you know, I've seen some, quite a bit of writing that says that most entertainment and fitness uses don't fit. They're not educational or primarily religious or agricultural. So I'm not quite sure how that was interpreted, and maybe I'd like to see that.
Okay, Bob, I'm just going to ask our building inspector. I see him with his hand raised here. Would you like to speak to your? Yep.
This is an educational use. And under the terms of education, it talks about training and sports athletics. They give the use label of educational with a very, very, very wide berth. And that's been proven in court cases over and over again. So while the Dover Amendment does talk about religious, educational, nonprofit, that sort of thing, and though this looks like a sports complex, it does fit as an educational use under the purview of the Dover Amendment.
Just a question then, did town council review the application and submit any feedback, I guess, or did they review and confirm?
We can send it to him, but it's a waste of your time because he's going to say the same thing. The gentleman that, wrote the original article requesting Dover Amendment status for this is in fact the zoning writer for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He teaches zoning. You folk probably have attended his zoning classes at any of the planning things. So, I've attended probably 20 or 30 of his classes as well. If you want, we can send it to town council to make you feel better. But, if that's what you want, we'll do it.
Okay,
Yeah,
Molly, do you have additional questions or follow-up there?
No, I am concerned when something has such a broad explanation. Is this primarily going to be used for instructional and training, or is it something where the public will be able to come and rent the fields or something like that?
The primary use is going to be for educational training. There may be some excess hours that we allow the Northborough Youth Soccer Program to use our field, but generally we will not be renting the outside now.
So is it for private clubs?
It's for our private club, correct?
Oh, okay. But okay. Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea when they make recommendations to be exempt from something with such a broad definition, maybe to have town council look at it.
Okay, do you have other questions?
That's it. My just question was what made it exempt.
Okay, thoughts on that from other board members or other board questions? Anthony?
I don't, and I think this is a great use certainly for the area as well. But I would say just mildly concerned about the use of the Dover Amendment, and not for this case necessarily, but what precedents it may create, if at all. And I would have to agree that I wouldn't mind having town council just weigh in to see how this may impact any future applications.
If I may, I'd like to give you a little background on the Dover Amendment. The
Is that you, Bob?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see all the people. Okay, thank you.
Okay. The Dover Amendment was written to give certain uses, for the lack of a better term, a free pass. But they did not specifically say what exact uses they were talking about. So if it's under religious or educational or whatever, they basically let the courts figure it out instead of the legislature or the people who wrote this. And the preponderance of the court case is talking about an educational use that's related to, training of any kind, including sports and fitness. Should be enough to settle, is this allowed under Dover? But like you said, I will reach out to the town council through our town administrator just to get some background support and ease your concerns.
Okay, Michelle, do you have any comments or questions? It doesn't have to be related to that.
No, I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay, Amy, do you have anything?
I just had a question probably for Bob, Kathy, or Fred. Do we allow parking on the side of the road on Cedar Hill Road? Like, is there any on-street parking, or would this facility have to stay in their parking lot? I just know some tournaments can get really big and they overflow and park down the street. I was just wondering if Cedar Hill Street allows on-street parking.
If you look at this is Bob again.
Yeah.
If you look at your parking and zoning loading requirements, all parking for a installed facility needs to be off the street.
Okay, so if there was overflow for like a tournament, they wouldn't be able to park on this street. That's my question. Okay.
However, though, unless a street is posted, a public street is posted no parking, then people can park on a public street. But as Bob said, the intent of the zoning bylaw is that the parking is provided for whatever use it is on the property belonging, to the applicant. I also just want to, just to remind people, because it's been a while that we've talked about any of this, but you are proposing a zoning bylaw at town meeting, which would make this type of use an allowed use in the industrial district.
Yes. So any reason why we just didn't wait until that was an allowed use and you didn't have to go through the Dover Amendment or anything? Was there a reason to go this path or?
Well, primarily, this is Bob again, primarily because when the applicants first came to us, there was no thought communicated to staff that this was going to be changed on the zoning bylaws to an allowed use.
Oh, okay, so timing pretty much.
Yeah, it's timing.
Okay, I just have a question about the parking. I think you actually said this, but so there's only, you can get in both ways, but you can only get out one way. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we were concerned with it, and it made sense during the discussions. There was a concern of introducing outgoing traffic that close to the Bartlett Street intersection. So we figured, we'd keep the people queuing on the site and get them on back out onto Cedar Hill as far away from that intersection as we could.
Yep. And then I had a question about the fire chief had a letter with a few different things on it. It sounds like, I know you walked through it a little bit, but all of his concerns were addressed? Okay.
Yeah, the only other thing I didn't mention was he had asked about a hydrant, putting a hydrant in his letter, which we did provide a proposed hydrant within 100 feet of the fire connection.
Okay. And then this parking lot piece, that's in the wetlands, that's in the buffer, the wetland buffer, right?
Yes, and originally that piece extended right up against the 35-foot no touch with a retaining wall to keep it, outside. I mean, the 35-foot no build, and we have, as these plans show, since pulled that back further. The change in the hatching is where our limit of work line is. One of the concerns was that we were right up against a 25-foot no touch with our limit of work, which we had now pulled that back to address conservation's concerns in that area as well. So we feel confident that at the conservation meeting on the 29th, now that we've gotten DEP's comments and a file number, we should be set to close with an order of conditions.
And is this primarily kids that come to the facility?
Yes, I think Brian could expand on it more, but they're a youth soccer organization.
That's fine. I was just questioning because it seems that you'd be mostly after school hours then, and maybe into the night. Obviously, you have the lights. I saw the study you had there for the lights. So even are these going to be huge floodlights up in the sky till 10 o'clock at night, Monday through Friday, or what does that look like for the people around the?
So I can answer that. I mean, typical usage on the outdoor field is going to be in the fall and in the spring. It runs about 10 weeks in the fall and about 10 weeks in the spring. We start as early as 4:30, 5 o'clock, and we're pretty much done by 9 o'clock. There may be a few weekends in the year where we go till 9:30, but the lights typically are out way before 10 o'clock. And most of the time we're going during the day on Saturdays, and during the day on Sundays, but not into the evening. So again, we're not there when most of the traffic flows there. Most of the traffic will be coming in after business hours.
Okay, so in your light study, if I were to look at how this is here, all of the lights are within the property. They're not spilling out into the, areas over the wetlands or anything like that. It's all okay.
Correct. Yep. I can get to it here. Yeah, these numbers on this plan here represent the foot candles at, I believe, 3 feet off the ground.
Rich, I just
said that on one of the other
have
sheets.
2 full-size fields that we use at another location using these same Musco lights, and there is no ambient light off the field. It gets dark really quickly, so they're up pretty tall, and it's not what you'd think. But basically, the higher the height is, the more the light stays right on the field.
Ah, okay, I see. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. And then that's great. I like how you did that with the traffic pattern there. I think that's really helpful because if you're familiar with that street, a lot of trucks going down there and it could be a doozy. So that's great. And there's a sidewalk. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing. Yeah, yeah.
And the sidewalk referenced in the plan, is that right here? Or I don't know if you can see what my mouse is doing. Yeah. could you just point out the sidewalk that you're putting in?
Just along the front of the building, in the front of the parking.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I pictured it closer to the street, but it's not close to the street.
No, no, everything is here.
Okay. All right. Okay, I think those were.
Mary?
Yes.
So I just wanted to mention, we did have this discussion through design review. And we talked to the applicant who mentioned, like Amy said, if there was a tournament and there would be more cars than usual. Most of the businesses around there do business during 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And especially if you're looking to the building right now, to the right of it, you know, the applicant could always ask people could always try and park over there where he's pointing to. There's some additional parking over there, but it's not on their lot. It's the other person's lot. But we talked about that should that situation ever occur.
Okay.
On the parking as well, one thing we could do is we could actually, if there was a concern about overflow on Cedar Hill Street, we could work with the town on posting no parking signs along our frontage. If that's something the town would be interested in, that has worked. I've worked on another similar facility down this way, and we worked with the city there and actually posted no parking signs along the street just for, you know, a little more comfort that people wouldn't be parking along the roadway.
Okay. Amy, did you
that would
have
be a
questions?
condition we'd be.
Did I skip you, Amy, to ask questions?
Oh, that's okay. And it would just be up to me how we was talking about the no parking signs. I guess that'd be more up to Bob and the police and the fire. I was just concerned about that intersection too, because they had Bartlett Street. They had that intersection redone with the warehouses because it was a problem. And I'm just afraid if there's a big backup and parking there, it could cause a problem. But that was my only thing. And I guess I would go along with asking town council about the Dover Amendment, just because I think it does set a precedence. Dover Amendment can go in any zone. And it's too bad because I would like it. It would be better if it was allowed after town meeting and we went through that process. So it's just off by a couple weeks.
So Kathy, are we able to approve a site plan pending confirmation from town council that this is qualifies for Dover Amendment, or is that not the right process?
Well, you could do that. You know, that certainly is one way if you wanted, you know, to approve the site plan tonight, you know, pending final review by town council. Or if you wanted to continue it, you know, Bob or I would be in contact with town council and hopefully have something, you know, for your next meeting, you know, a week from tonight.
I mean, for me, I think we've been asking for something different over in that area, and we have something different, and I think this is great. It's a nice plan. Bring something different to Northborough, so I think that's exciting for us. I too have that concern about Dover Amendment. I almost wish the timing worked out differently because we obviously support this use in this district by way of our bylaw proposal. But the one thing that makes me nervous is, you know, the precedent involved, the limitations that Dover Amendment brings to any of our conditions, although it looks like this application complies with all of our regulations anyway.
Let me just comment again, Brian Mazar. There was a legal document that we submitted to the town. I think it's 4 or 5 pages. It cites numerous court cases regarding sports organizations and the Dover Amendment. It might be worth circulating that to the board just so you can see that history.
Thank you.
Sure.
I just had one other question. When I looked through the book, it talked about fiscal impacts and it talked about associated tax revenues that may be realized by the potential to add new jobs to the area, as well as increasing business to the surrounding restaurants, stores. And does that mean if you go through Dover Amendment that you don't pay property taxes? It doesn't mention property taxes.
In our other facilities, we are exempt from property taxes because we're a not-for-profit educational organization. So that has been the ruling in the other places we're located, correct?
Okay, that was just a question. So that's because you're nonprofit. It's not because of the Dover Amendment.
It's because it's 501c3 specifically under the educational requirements that are due for 501c3. And part of that is you need to be serving the underserved community, which we do. So there's a variety of definitions that are required to be met, not to pay taxes, which we do meet.
This is not officially a public hearing, but I am willing to take comments if there's anybody attending the meeting that would like to make a comment or have a question. Okay, doesn't look like anything. Okay. Conditions wise, does the board have, I'm sorry, Fred, I didn't give you a chance to speak regarding any sort, it sounds like groundwater, you sent out a letter that they've already met your request for groundwater.
Yes, the understanding by the applicant was that he would meet all the requirements of groundwater, even though they were afforded the exemption under the Dover Amendment. I did ask the engineer to submit documentation verifying that he can meet the regulations, specifically in regards to the not exceeding the 40% impervious cover, and also the not exceeding the 15% increase in the volume of the runoff. We did speak today after he got my letter, and he does meet those requirements. He submitted a calculation sheet for impervious cover. Unfortunately, he did not take the benefit of the fact that the roof and the parking are all being infiltrated, which is how applicant gets back under that 15% runoff limit and the impervious cover limit as well. I did have a couple of conditions that I wanted to offer, similar to the last application, the two permeability tests in each of the infiltration areas. The building shall be heated with natural gas. The plans indicate there's gas in the street, and that's always something that the Groundwater Committee looks for. That no road salt or sand salt will be stockpiled on site due to the impact of the groundwater. The stormwater operation and maintenance plan needed to be tweaked a bit so that it could include some definitions for what was being inspected and how often, along with a sample inspection form to be submitted with the operation and maintenance plan, and then a completed one would be submitted with the as-built plan. And then all of the conditions that I normally have in the as-built plan are outlined in condition number 6. And then there's also a few items that in talking to the DPW, that they are required to pay a water privilege fee of $9,800 and a sewer privilege fee of $45,500. And the applicant, although they're afforded an exception under the Dover Amendment, they are not exempt from conservation or earthwork, as those are not part of the zoning bylaw. And then in the end, we would get a copy of a complete set of plans that would be reviewed by me prior to any work starting on site, to make sure that any conditions that you put in the decision are effectively put on the plans and set forth before construction starts.
Okay, so this is a weird question for you, Fred. I don't think I've ever asked it. Are porta potties under your domain?
Not generally.
Okay.
But they do have facilities within the building, and they will be connected to town sewer, which is why they have to pay that $45,000 fee. So I expect that they'll be using the facilities inside the building.
Okay, so if someone on the team wouldn't mind answering, well, are there porta potties on the field or anything like that, or?
No, the proposal is to access the bathrooms within the building. If you look at the screen here, there's a gate here with a path into the building in this location, and this is basically where the bathrooms are.
Okay, any other questions from the board or comments from staff?
Carrie, I just wanted to point out there was a letter from the design review committee.
Oh, thank you.
And but that's okay. They Rich addressed the comments. Mainly had to do with the outstanding item was about landscaping, and it was just about updating the plan. and the applicant was, when we last met in March, the beginning of March, the applicant was going to make those changes on the plan in time to be seen at the mid-March planning board meeting. So that was the only thing that was outstanding, and they did take care of that. So that's been addressed.
No conditions then coming out of the design review?
No.
Okay, one thing I would be interested in is if we could add a condition to maintain the planted trees and everything else planned and maintain in perpetuity so that if it doesn't die off, or I think it looks like you have a good plan in place for the landscaping and just would want it to be maintained.
Mhm.
In the arrows on the parking lot, do we need to put a condition to make that the case that there's an entrance only, that first is an entrance only, or that's just part of the plan, it doesn't have to be a condition?
The plan, if the planning board, approved the site plan, we would reference the particular date of the site plan, which, encompasses the turning movements. Everything to do with the parking would be automatically, part of the decision because the site plan is what's getting approved.
Okay, so, oh wait, hold on, I do have a public comment here. Hold on one second. Okay, could I ask you to just list your name and your street?
Yes, Henry Squilani, 72 Crestwood Drive. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi Henry, go right ahead.
I have a question. With this Dover and the 501c3, if at some later date they sell the property, what goes with it as far as the Dover or the 501c3 tag on this piece of property? If somebody buys it that's not a nonprofit, what do they have to change anything, or is everything as is?
That's a good question. Do we have that answer? No.
No, I don't have an answer. I don't know if Bob knows or
Bob, do you know?
if the applicant.
Yeah, that's a question I have not heard of before. I believe the use would go with the property and what they're doing with it. But since we're going to try to get an answer from town council for the Dover Amendment outright, why don't we ask that as a second question? Just ask, what would happen if this property were to be sold? Does the Dover Amendment still apply? Okay, that's an issue, to be honest with you. With all my experience with Dover, I haven't seen that happen. So Dover Amendment and then sale, I'm writing this down. After Dover moves out. Yeah, I will refer to town council with that. Just be aware that town council right now, because I've had to deal with town council last week. Right now, they are spinning out of control with this whole COVID thing and reopening of stores and town halls and everything else. So while I'll try to put a bug in their ear and try to get a response as timely as possible, I can't really promise that. I do know that dealing with our town council last week, I actually had to call them on a Sunday to get a response. So, I'll get this letter crafted tomorrow morning. I'll send it to John for his approval. And, if we can get that to Dave Dineski, hopefully tomorrow or Thursday, that would be good.
So Rich, what is your timeline for when you want to be, cracking ground on site?
I let Brian answer that. I know he's got a PNS on the property that's critical with the regards to the permitting.
The issue is with the seller. We will not close on the property until we have permits in hand.
Okay.
And we're getting a lot of pressure, honestly, from the seller just because this has gone so long right now. I guarantee I'll have email in my inbox tonight to know how the meeting went. So, we started this process in January. We are beyond our due diligence process, so we've extended that twice now because obviously COVID-19. So we are under a lot of pressure. Technically, we could lose the P&S if this goes beyond the end of the month.
Okay, so how does the board feel about, if there are no problems with the site plan, other than we want to make sure that this is, in line with what our town council expects to have it for a Dover amendment? Is this something that we're prepared to approve? Would we be willing to approve with that pending, or is it something we ask for the letter and then we come back, but they don't have to present again? We're literally just kind of coming back for the final vote. That would help expedite. What does the board feel?
Yeah. So I agree with Brian. Most commercial purchase and sale agreements, they have 90 days for due diligence, and he's probably way past that.
Yeah.
So I would hate for him to lose the opportunity to purchase this for one thing that's not necessarily a technicality, but more of for future. What if the property is sold? Does it transfer with the property? I would ask Bob or Kathy, is that something in language that you could put in the decision tonight, or no? I'm looking, you shake your head, Bob. No, but you can't. Yeah. You're on mute, Bob.
We can do the condition it runs with the current owner, right? And then the next person who came would have to reapply, and that would cover at least part of our questions.
There's really no telling what's going to happen in the future in terms of selling the property.
Right.
That's probably an issue to be raised and figured out at that point. It could, because that particular question doesn't really have any bearing on your approval for the project. They could hold this in perpetuity. The town will never get any taxes on it. So be it. If they sell it, I think that would be the appropriate time to figure it out. But like I said, I'll send that hypothetical to the town council. Because now that you brought it up, I'm as intrigued about it as you are, about what happens. So, I'll ask the question.
Kathy, is that a legal question we can make a legal condition that the site plan approval is pending confirmation from town council that this satisfies Dover amendment requirements? Or
from what I've been told in the past by applicants and attorneys, that if you make it a conditional approval, it's just hanging there, and banks often find it difficult to finance a project because it's a conditional approval, and then you would receive an answer. I mean, we would pursue an answer from town council. We would pass it on to the board members, but it never gets memorialized into the decision. Mm-hmm. So at least that has been my experience. I don't know if anyone else wants to weigh in on that, but so I would think that you would probably want us to go forward, maybe it's not a public hearing, so you're not essentially, you're not continuing the public hearing, but at least continuing the discussion to a week from tonight. As Bob said, I know town council is straight out, plus we have a pending town meeting. That decision hasn't been made yet, but there's a pending town meeting on June 22nd. But I could certainly work on at least drafting an approval for you so that you could have it, for the 16th. And another thing about the decision, Amy was talking about, possibly making it a condition that it would run with the applicant. You can only do that if you're talking about a special permit or a variance. This is neither. This is just a straight site plan approval.
Okay. So in that case,
I have one.
I'm sorry, who's speaking? Is that you, Rich?
This is Rich.
Oh,
yeah, I just had one suggestion possibly with regards to I don't know, with regards to this issue with the Dover Amendment, whether or not you could condition it that, no building permit is issued until that issue is clarified, and just write that into the decision. That way we know we're not going to be, or no site work, something to that effect. That way you can get your comfort level on that being clarified by town council and we could move forward with the permit.
Is that one half dozen or the other, Kathy, to do it that way versus put the condition, or is that a different beast?
Well, again, and I'm not an attorney or a banker, but unless Brian wants to weigh in on this as far as financing, but that's what I've always understood, is that if there's if the decision is a little ambivalent, that financing is at risk, and maybe that's not an issue here, though.
Yes. So just a comment on that, we are self-financing the purchase of the land. So we're not working through a bank. So the financing is really not the issue. The issue for us is if we don't get the appropriate permits to do what we want to do, we can't be buying the land as not-for-profit. We run into big issues. So either way, we're going to be a little bit of a logjam, I think, if there's contingencies built into it that haven't been approved.
I mean, if the board wants to proceed that way, I'll certainly write it that that a building permit, which is that a building permit could not be issued until I have to think about how I would write that, but until there's clarification from town council or something.
I mean, that would be the same way as if you were to meet you have to meet the fire chief's specifications, right? You don't get a building permit until you meet what the fire chief has to say. You don't get a building permit. I mean, is it similar in a way?
Well, I've got one, this is Bob Federico again. I've got one question regarding Brian's, issue with, making sure the permits are issued or all set. Is your purchase and sale contingent upon a building permit being issued as well?
No, a site plan and Conservation Commission approval.
Okay, because I run into situations before where, they actually want the building permit to be issued, and I'm like, you really can't do that.
No, I understand.
But it's usually it's a will issue, providing that the project meets all the requirements of the Mass State Building Code. That's generally the letter that I send out. So I just want to make that clear in terms of what I need to do or not do.
Sure.
All right, thanks.
All right, let me take a quick board temperature check. So the options are either we approve it tonight as is, we approve it tonight with this condition, or we pretty much have it all locked up except for we wait till June 16th to come back together. We don't need another presentation. We're just coming back pretty much to get that confirmation and vote. So if I could just get a quick straw poll on what board members prefer out of those three, so we can wrap this up. Anthony, do you have a preference?
Yeah, I think to simplify the whole thing would be just to check with town council this week. We'll get an, hopefully we get an answer, and then we throw this back on the agenda for next week, and we just close it out at that point, and then Kathy can write the approval this week, so we're ready to go.
Because that would actually cut time. Okay, Michelle, do you have a preference out of those options?
I don't have a problem with approving it tonight, but we're meeting next week. So if the applicant agrees to come back next week, I think we can wrap it up at that time.
Okay, Amy, do you have a preference?
I agree with Michelle and Anthony.
Okay, Michelle wanted to do it tonight, but she's willing to say next week, wrap it up, have Kathy start writing everything, and so that next week is almost a technicality.
I don't know. I almost think what Anthony said, waiting till next week sounds easier, because to write in the condition about waiting for town council, it just seems cleaner if, I think he said that he needed it wrapped up by the end of the month. So if we got it wrapped up by next week, I would hope it wouldn't, kill the sale.
Okay, Millie, I think, where are you, Millie?
I'm echoing that. I think that if we can get it all wrapped up for next week, that's the easier process.
Okay, so for the benefit of Kathy getting this in a good spot where she doesn't have to spend a lot of time on the back end, are there any, aside from Fred's conditions and maintaining the landscaping or the trees that are proposed to be planted in perpetuity. Are there any other conditions proposed?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We want a condition about parking, like if there's a problem with street parking, that it has to be worked out with the town. Like, I know there have been things in the past where like the applicant says, oh, if there's a problem, we'll put up no parking signs, or I don't know, does there have to be a condition that if parking becomes a problem and the intersection becomes dangerous, the applicant agrees to meet with either the planning department or the police, whoever would handle it?
I think we can.
That's the only thing that concerns me is the intersection and people parking there.
I just think if there were a problem that presented itself after they opened up, I think the police chief would have, would interject quite quickly.
Okay.
If I can maybe rest your mind a little bit, Amy, this is equivalent to one full-size field. So we put in enough parking that even in the overflow where you have teams leaving, team coming, which when you have the most number of cars, because you have that period of time where they're overlapping, we made sure we had enough parking on site that can handle that. The easy fix for us is we would just schedule more time between games if that ended up being a problem. So that's something we can manage. And
okay,
we'd be responsible for managing it.
The as far as the parking signs, even though you may or may not want to put something about that as a condition, the selectmen ultimately have to, they're the road commissioners for the town, so they have to vote to approve the installation of no parking signs on any public road. So it's not anything, that certainly would be resolved between now and next Tuesday. So I think just in general, if there ever is a parking problem on Cedar Hill Street, that's something that we'd have to take up separately with the Board of Selectmen, and and maybe request perhaps the planning board, if in the future this was an issue, the planning board could request the selectmen to install no parking signs based on previous discussion, the site plan approval, that type of thing.
okay.
Okay, so it sounds like we have our conditions covered for the team on 400. You don't all have to, if we continue to next week, you don't all have to come back. You don't all have to present. It's really just, we can put it right at the beginning of the meeting, really quick, sort of go through the letter from town council and then take our vote. So is the 16th, are we starting at 6 or 6:30 next week?
6 o'clock is how it was advertised.
Okay, so you don't have to come right at 6 if there's a better time that night. What works for your team?
Right.
Okay, I think 6 o'clock would work.
Yeah, 6 works right at the start would be good.
Okay.
Brian, I actually have a quick question.
Yes, go ahead, Millie.
Is there any plans for food or concessions at all?
Yes, we will have concessions inside the building, not outside, but inside the building. Yes.
Okay. I just didn't see that.
Yes, I think it's in Dan's plan. He didn't really show the inside of it, but in that office space, that 10,000 square feet in the front of the building, that's where the concessions would go.
Okay.
You look like an opportunity for some catering and things like that as well.
You bet.
Okay. All right. So I just need a motion to continue the hearing, the site plan approval for 400 Cedar Hill Street to June 16th at 6 p.m.
I make a motion to continue the site plan approval for 400 Cedar Hill Street to June 16th at 6 p.m.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I'm going to do a roll call. Let's see, Millie.
Aye.
Amy.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Michelle.
Aye.
And I'm also an aye. Okay, so we will see one of you. Is there one person coming back or everybody's coming back? Who's the lucky one?
Probably be me and Brian.
Yeah, I think we'll be on.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing you again. I know it's probably not exactly what you want to hear, but I think this is on a good track, and it'll just help ease our minds. And I think overall, this is a exciting addition to Northborough. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna transition.
I hate to say it, but I have to go. So I can't, I might come back, but I can't stay.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Okay, so just for the minutes, Amy Paretsky at 51. If we could just note that in the minutes. I think she's left. She's still on the list here, but that's okay. Okay. Next, we have the public hearing for the proposed zoning amendments for the 2020 annual town meeting. And I have a letter, a hearing letter to read for that as well. The public hearing notice states that in accordance with MGL Chapter 40A, Section 5, the Northborough Planning Board will hold a public hearing on June 9th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. for the purpose of seeking public opinion on proposed amendments to the following sections of the Northborough Zoning Bylaw, Chapter 7. Complete text of the proposed amendments is on file at the Town Clerk's office and Town Planner's office and may be viewed on the Planning Department webpage. Again, there's the notice that I read earlier in the meeting tonight regarding Governor Baker's order allowing us to meet remotely. The agenda reflects how the public can participate in this meeting via Zoom and calling. As a reminder, if you call on your telephone, you will need to dial *9 in order to raise your hand to speak. The bylaws listed are the same ones reflected on the agenda that are in this order. Looks like that's the same, so I won't read that again because it's very long. And with that, I will open the hearing to the bylaws. Now, what I was going to do is actually share my screen so that we could look through the bylaws together. Would that make sense? So that everybody has the same file, or?
Well, I have a PowerPoint presentation, Carrie.
Oh, okay.
I mean, whatever you want to do. If you want to do whatever you have set up, or
With the board. So what I want to do is we need to end at 9:30 to give the team time to get everything they need to do for getting things posted online and all of that. And then we'll obviously have to continue this bylaws hearing until June 16th. So it would make sense to get started. Kathy, it sounds like maybe a presentation would expedite that unless any board members have a specific preference.
I think the PowerPoint would be great.
The only thing I want to make time for, I want to leave the last few minutes to talk about the planning board articles for the town warrant. I don't know if any of you attended the Board of Selectmen meeting last night. There was conversation about town meeting. Actually, if you don't mind, why don't we just talk about that first so we don't run out of time, because we need to get an answer back to them by the next time they meet, which I think is the 15th. So if you didn't attend the meeting, the current proposal is to have town meeting on June 22nd in the high school gym. I think it was the DPW Scott who went and looked and figured out distancing the chairs and things like that. So there won't be any screens for us to present. That'll all be done in packets. And the question was if the planning board would be agreeable to looking at our amendments, whether, I don't know if that's condensing, removing, what do we want to do with our specific amendments for a town meeting? So just to have a quick discussion on that, I just open it up to board members to discuss.
I'll start. So based on what we know today, based on data from the CDC, the aerosol version of the virus can go 13 feet. So this 6-foot distancing, I don't think is appropriate or not or adequate, especially in an indoor, unventilated area. you're going to have a lot of people who are going to be vulnerable attending as well. And personally, for me, I wouldn't attend that meeting.
Okay, what are your thoughts on our articles in the warrant?
In terms of what we do,
Yes, what do we do about our zoning articles?
as in postponing, or
Right, would we postpone them to a later time or keep them as is? Any thoughts on what we'd want to do?
I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, if based on what I saw at the Board of Selectmen meeting last night, I saw there was, a good level of opposition for this meeting as well. So whether this meeting happens or not, I think is a great question. So, I think we would keep it in line. It's an answer. I mean, it's a question I can't answer. Because I don't know what's going to happen.
Okay, other thoughts, Michelle or Millie?
Carrie, isn't one of the potential options that to postpone the zoning to a fall town meeting?
Yeah, so postpone or just keep it as is. Michelle or Millie?
Do you mean postpone just the articles, but keep the town meeting?
Yeah, so keep town meeting, but postpone our zoning articles to a fall meeting that's not actually guaranteed at this point. It would just be whatever meeting, if there's a fall town meeting, our articles would be postponed to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should go with town meeting. I think we should go as the school committee is presenting their articles. We should present our articles. I mean, that's the way it's always been done, and I think we should do it. There's no guarantee in the fall that there will even be a town meeting. What if we talk about a second wave, so no one has any idea what the fall is going to bring. I think if they're going to meet in June, that we should just go along, present our articles in June.
Millie, do you have thoughts?
I do think it's easier to keep it with the town meeting schedule. Whether or not town meeting should be happening in June is that's a different entity.
Amy's not here to comment. I think, I would wonder if there'd be an opportunity that if, we've tried to run the town meeting as far as we could get, if for some reason it was just the environment was no longer amenable to continue, or if there was, people left and we didn't have a quorum by that time, I think that probably beyond our own articles, they would have to be continued, whether it stops at zoning or whether it stops at number 27 or 20, how do we know when is, what's the time, what's the clock on it? I don't know. In terms of attending in general, how do you feel about even attending? Because obviously we present these articles at town meeting.
You mean as far as all of us having a presence there?
Yeah, so we usually split up and present the articles and do a presentation. If it were held June 22nd at the gym, would you be comfortable attending that meeting to present the articles?
I would.
Yeah.
But I might be the exception on that.
Anthony, you are not comfortable.
Correct.
Okay, Michelle, what are your thoughts?
I actually don't know the guidelines that they're recommending yet. I'm just seeing on social media a lot of concerns, so I'm waiting to see how they're going to respond to the guidelines. I do think that if you're going to, I don't agree, even if this town meeting had to end, that we should be put on to a town meeting at a later date. It's going to be very, very hard to get people back out again.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very hard. You're not going to get a quorum. It's, I think the same right that's given to the Board of Selectmen and the school committee should be given to the same right as the planning board. They're just as important issues.
Yeah.
Is there any opportunity to consolidate any of are there any similar articles that would allow for consolidation, Kathy, to shorten them up at all?
I'm not sure if you can do that with zoning, but I can certainly check on that tomorrow. But there is, and the term escapes me right now, Bob or Fred might remember what it is, but there's some term about that you can group articles together. There's probably going to be a request or a suggestion to do that with all the CPC articles, is that they would be all voted on at once. So it sort of becomes a, it's all or nothing. I know that you can do that with everything else on the warrant. My guess is that you can also do that with zoning, but I will certainly verify that within the next day or so. The other thing, though, that does need to happen tonight, because we do, I guess right now we have to make an assumption that town meeting is June 22nd, and we need to know who's going to make motions and who's going to make presentations. And I know that's a little difficult under the, with the conversation that we're having right now, but just timing wise for what gets printed up for town meeting, I have to have that information tonight.
Okay. So we have to solve that. Are there any of our bylaws that we are, like, for example, any of the longer ones, something that, well, I guess to your point, Michelle, we're not going to come back just to approve a solar bylaw. We're not going to come back even if we held one. Okay. I mean, do we know if even legally you could combine zoning bylaws? Well, because you need 2/3 vote for all of them, no matter what.
Right. So what I can do is just find out tomorrow from, either the town administrator or town council about, can they be voted on as a, a whole slate, that it would be, Article 38 to, I think it's 43. And that it would just be one presentation, but then ultimately one vote.
But what if you were a resident who agreed with one but not the other? Would that just create confusion and chaos?
Well, I think that's what you face when I'm going to guess that you have to take a vote at town meeting to combine the articles. And then if that vote failed, then you would go through each article individually. But if that vote passed, then that's what you're agreeing to, is that you're going to be voting once on, 6 articles or 7 articles. Again, I don't have answers for you tonight. I can get those answers. As far as how the voting would happen at town meeting.
Michelle, were you saying something?
Yeah, I also think it's all in the presentation. If we make our presentations fairly quick and concise, right? We can whip through this if they're not intense changes, right? And unless someone from the public, who's going to have all this detail is going to have a question, and you have a long discussion, I think if our presentation is short and concise, we can get through this pretty quickly.
Yeah, for me, as an individual, I don't support town meeting happening in the gym indoors. I think it should be outdoors or in the fall. So at this point, I don't think that I'm comfortable attending town meeting in the current environment. So Millie, you may be the one, or I guess Kathy, you're able to present on behalf of the planning board as well. And that's not ideal. We worked on these, we've put them forward. Ideally, we're there to speak to them. So I don't know if there's anything the planning board wants, if we want to draft a letter that we as a planning board, we don't support this, or, we prefer to be there to present our articles and, not be excluded from the process as a board in town. I don't know. Any thoughts on that? Oh, Millie, you're on mute.
I think it is worth presenting I think that is worth presenting, that we're not entirely comfortable in presenting it this way at that date.
Michelle or Anthony, any thoughts on that?
guess the question I would ask is, would the board members attend if it was outside? And if the board members would attend if it's outside, because that's your only other forum, then you could send a letter to the Board of Selectmen requesting that the town meeting happens outside.
I would agree with that.
I would attend if outside. I don't know how other board members would. Millie, it sounds like you're in either way.
I'm in
Michelle,
either way.
You're depending on restrictions, but if it were outside, Michelle, would you go?
I'll be attending inside or outside. I just don't know what it's going to be like inside because I haven't read what the how they're going to lay it out or what the plans are or anything like that. It's the first I heard about it. I just heard that there was some concerns on social media.
Okay. Anthony, would you attend outside?
I would.
Okay.
Can you? Yep.
Okay. So would we want to draft a letter maybe that would express that we'd like to keep our articles as is, unless there's any way to, I mean, I don't see any way to merge it, but if there was a way to consolidate, is the board open to consolidating if that's even, or maybe we work, I think Michelle, you said to keep the presentations short and.
Yeah.
And that we would, we have hesitations about attending indoors would be more agreeable to, it seems like all members are willing to go outdoors, except we don't know for sure about Amy, but. So in terms of drafting something, Kathy, do you want me to, should I write something and just send it to everybody or send it to you to send to everybody? I don't know how to do that with an open meeting.
Well, I think if just based on, where you're all at tonight, I mean, I think you as the chair, can draft a letter based on the consensus and send that to the town administrator and the chair of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, but I don't have to get back and have a public approval, or how does
No.
the board see the letter? So
No. If again, if you get everyone's agreement tonight that you're going to proceed with a letter, that works.
Would that type of message represent your thoughts correctly?
For me, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you look worried.
Agree.
Yep.
Okay. And then I guess that doesn't reflect Amy though necessarily. So how would we reflect Amy?
Well, you can't at this point. She's not, at the meeting.
Well, she can write her own letter separately as a resident if she chooses.
Mm-hmm. So what, just from my own notes, what I'm hearing is that the four of you present here are okay if town meeting was held outside, and that you prefer that each zoning article is voted on individually as opposed to grouping them into one article.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we plan on the next up until 9:25? Kathy, how long is your presentation?
I can speed talk. I mean, on one hand, it would be, I wonder if there's any way, if we can tell if there's anyone that's online, because otherwise, I mean, it's definitely, at least 15 minutes long.
Okay,
But you've also,
okay.
you also have, I mean, if you want to do those tonight, you also have 4 sets of minutes.
Mhm.
You have a bond release that we need to do, and then you need to assign the articles to people. So on one hand, Carrie, if you want, we can just do all of this on the 16th, or if you want me to, knock off a couple articles tonight, or, I mean, obviously everyone that's present right now, knows these, as well as I do. But I mean, I certainly understand that it's a public hearing and there may be people watching on YouTube that we don't know.
Okay.
So
how does the board feel about either starting or holding?
As in doing this tonight or next week?
Yes, just getting started with Kathy's presentation.
Well, for me, I think based on the time we have, if we can just get our house cleaning done tonight with the minutes and the bond release, I mean, I don't know. Might
You
make
know,
more
next
sense.
week, oh, I'm sorry, Anthony. I mean, you know, we're starting half an hour earlier next week also. You know, that's going to be a little helpful.
Mhm.
I mean, you do have two, you know, hearings next week, but you are starting half an hour earlier. I mean, whatever the board wants me to do.
Michelle or Millie, what would you like to do? Do you want us to get started or?
I think we should hold for the zoning for next week and just take care of the minutes now, wrap up the meeting.
Yep, I agree with that.
Okay. Okay, so I just need a motion to continue the public hearing regarding the proposed zoning amendments for 2020 annual town meeting to June 16th at 6 p.m.
Wait, but just before you do that, Carrie, can you, we need to decide who's making motions and doing presentations.
There's no way to do that next week?
According to the email I have, no, but
So
I
can
mean,
I interject? Millie, have you ever done a presentation yet?
0.
Okay. So, and I've presented before. So why doesn't, so you're asking who's going to present the articles at town meeting?
yeah, you have to figure out who's going to read the motions and then who's going to make the presentations.
Okay. So given that we don't know if Amy's going to attend, and at this point, Kerry and Anthony will not attend because of the venue, then why doesn't Millie make the motion? Because that's the easiest thing to do. And I will do the presentation. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, I mean that, yeah, that you have to determine that every year. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And if town meeting changes, could we revise that?
Yeah.
Okay, so if all of a sudden it's outside, we can resubmit who does what?
Yeah, and I would assume if it does go outside, Carrie, it's going to be on a different date. And most likely it would be a Saturday.
Okay.
Again, my assumption, but the towns that I've seen, although I think Auburn did theirs at night under the football lights, but I think that was last week. But anyways.
Yeah, because Kerry and I have presented articles before. Kerry, you did some last year. I think I might have done some last year. The year
Oh, Anthony
before.
did too. Remember he did that beautiful
Anthony
sign
done some
presentation.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody did last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so so just to check this box off with the process, I will say that Millie will be making the motions, Michelle will be making the presentations, and then obviously if we, you know, all bets are off, we don't know what's really happening. So
Yeah.
okay.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, motion to continue the public hearing regarding proposed zoning amendments for 2020 annual town meeting to June 16th at 6 p.m.
I make a motion to continue proposed zoning amendments for 2020 annual town meeting to June 16th, 6 p.m.
Second?
Second.
Okay, I'll do a roll call. Anthony?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Millie?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Okay, moving along to consideration of minutes. So we have minutes for the, do I have the 16th? Yes, I do. For January 16th. Did everyone have a chance to read the minutes for January 16th?
I have,
Yes.
I'm just looking, Amy had sent, oh, I just got to find it. Amy had, I'm sorry, which ones are you doing, Carrie?
I just started with January 16th.
Okay, so Amy had one question. Oh, it's not very specific about setbacks, and then she had a spelling mistake. So I don't know which setbacks she was talking about whether it's 1,000 or the 1,500. I don't know. She didn't elaborate.
In any of the meetings that Amy, and all of the meeting minutes that you submitted to us to review for tonight's meeting, Are any of those that she did not have comments on?
She has comments on, the only one she didn't have a comment on was the 10th.
That one.
We have the 10th on here? Oh, 310, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to start easy?
Yeah, let's start the easy one.
Okay. Did everyone have a chance to read the minutes from March 10th? Are there
Yes.
any amendments to the minutes?
No.
Okay, I don't have them either. Okay, is there a motion to approve the March 10th minutes as submitted?
I make a motion to approve the March 10th minutes as submitted.
Second,
Second,
any further discussion? Okay,
No.
all in favor, roll call, Anthony?
Aye.
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Lily? Okay, I
Aye.
think you guys did that backwards, but we got the gist. And Carrie is an aye as well.
Okay, so then on the let me see if I can find what her question on the 5th was. Yeah, see what I'm using my phone and things don't track on my phone. So I can't tell what if she highlighted something, it doesn't come through on my phone.
Okay,
So on the 10th, her comment was, on the 5th, she just said on March 5th, I had one question on wording and I'm not sure what the word should be.
so we don't know what the word is she referenced?
No, I
Okay.
can't,
Okay, so I don't think we can solve that, or I don't think we should hold up the minutes for that unless the board disagrees, and I think we should get our minutes cleared out. Is that okay with everybody?
I agree.
Okay. Kathy, was there anything else?
not on the 5th.
Okay. I just had a minor clarification at the bottom of page 5. It said that I discussed having, this is when we were talking about the implementation committee, and I discussed having 2 members from the planning board to be staggered. I don't know if this came through. I just wanted to make sure that it did. That was really about picking 2 members that were on staggered terms so that we'd always have consistency. So, it'd have to be, it could never be me and Anthony because we run on the same cycle. So that's what I explained. I don't know if that comes through and how it's stated now. I thought maybe if we just added something like to align with terms or something to make that clear.
I think it does need to be clarified
Okay.
from the planning board
So to align with oh, am I muted? Okay.
on staggered terms.
Yeah,
The
something
pla-
like that. That just clarifies
Okay.
what I meant.
To be aligned with staggered terms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments on the minutes from 3-5? Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes from March 5th as amended.
Second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, all in favor? I'll do roll call. Anthony?
Aye.
Michelle?
aye.
Millie?
Aye.
Okay, I'm also aye. So the minutes pass. Okay, 2:18. I have nothing. Any edits from the board?
The only thing, I get, for whatever reason now, it's hard doing it from your phone, but the document won't open on my phone. But Amy says that she changed 2 sentences on 2:18.
Oh, we don't know what they are.
No, I can't open it.
Okay. Are we okay with approving these minutes?
I'm okay.
I'm okay too.
Anthony, did you have an edit?
No, I did not.
Oh, okay, I thought I heard somebody. Did somebody have an edit? Okay.
I did not.
Could anyone make a motion to approve the February 18th minutes as submitted?
I make a motion to approve the February 18, 2020 minutes as submitted.
Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor, roll call. Anthony?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Millie?
Aye.
And Carrie is an aye. Okay, finally, January 16th. Was there something here, Kathy, or is that what we can't figure out?
This is where she made a spelling correction and then just said she had one question about setbacks. I mean, the 16th is 20 pages of minutes.
Mhm.
And you have, well, I shouldn't assume, but there was a lot of discussion about the solar bylaw that night.
Yep.
I think on the 16th. So that, and I know that might have been the discussion where everybody, there was discussion about what the setbacks should be. But I'm just making a guess because again, I can't open it on my phone.
Well, if for some reason it was a critical error, I suppose we could reopen the minutes and vote again. If Amy did come around and say, we misrepresented the setback in these minutes, we must fix them or else we're going to be, in a world of hurt down the line. We could always, what is it? Do we recall them or something? I forget now, but.
In the minutes?
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Later on, we could, if we approved it tonight and there was some sort of critical error, we could always reevaluate, recall it. I think I can't remember. I think it's we'd recall it if we had to, if we even had to. So is everyone okay with still approving the January 16th without that clarification?
I am.
I am.
Okay. I just had one edit here on page 3. It was that Ms. Martinick advised that she had given board members details and photos about solar.
On page 3, Carrie, where are you? The top or the under solar bylaw?
Yep, it's under solar, and it says Ms. Martinick advised that she had given the board members or something like.
Yep, okay.
I'm pretty sure that wasn't me. I think that was you. I had no, Kathy, I think that was you, not me, who gave all the numbers. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I know I certainly wouldn't have been any help giving people details on solar. So, okay. So, any other edits to these minutes?
No.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve these minutes as amended?
I make a motion to approve the January 16, 2020 meeting minutes as amended.
Okay, second.
Second.
Was that you, Michelle, that gave a second?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Sorry, any further discussion?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
All in favor, roll call. Anthony?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Millie?
Aye.
Okay, and Carrie is an aye as well. So that's great. We're caught up to minutes through March. Good. Okay, we have a bond release.
Yeah, I'll just have Fred just make a reference to that. He spoke with the developer about that.
There's a project, Sterling Court off of East Main Street that was accepted at town meeting in 2018, and there was a lag in getting the plans recorded, and I thought there may have been some money owed to the town, but after reviewing the file, it seems as though everything is taken care of, and at this point, I just need you to release the remaining amount in the bond. I don't have my memo in front of me, but I think it was $17,000.
Okay, do we have, is that the exact amount?
Yeah, it was 17, I remember.
Okay. Any discussion or questions?
Nope.
No.
Okay, so motion to approve the bond release as presented. Or do the amount? You need the amount and the recipient? What do you need for the motion?
Just yeah, that you're releasing the bond. I do know that it's 17,000
Okay, so.
for
but do I
Sterling
need-
Court.
Okay, is there a motion to release the bond for $17,000 to Sterling Court?
I make a motion.
Right,
I-
Anthony.
I make a motion, we release the bond for Sterling Court in an amount of $17,000.
Second?
Second,
Okay, further discussion? All in favor? Okay, roll call, Anthony,
Aye.
Michelle,
aye.
Millie,
Aye.
and Carrie's an aye. Anything else that do you have any other issues that are in old business?
I don't carry for tonight. It was just taking care of the town meeting, assignments and the release of that bond. So I'm good until next week.
And for the agenda next week, so just to recap what we have to look forward to, we have 400 closing up the bylaws. And then what other applications do we have?
So at your next meeting, you have a new hearing for, that again was slated to start in March. A hearing for 222 West Main Street, a common driveway that's being proposed. So that's a special permit hearing. And then that's the project that's on the corner of Lincoln and West Main. So they're proposing a common driveway and for 2 lots. And then 425 Whitney Street, the continuation of the Steris project. And what I will send, I just didn't want it to get confused with tonight's information. We did receive the response for the second set of questions that we left off in February or March. So I do have that response from Steris, and I'll send that to everybody tomorrow.
Go ahead.
No, that's
Oh,
all
sorry,
right.
sorry. In terms of how much time you think we need for each of these hearings, what would you say? Is Steris doing a full presentation of their responses, or?
Well, I think they're anticipating on doing that. It's whatever you want them to do, but I think that's what you had them do last time. Was they went through the board's questions and went over their answers, and then then we've got to pull the sort of pull the plug on then sending it out for peer review.
And is 222 doesn't seem like it would be a lengthy presentation for a common driveway?
No, it's a common driveway for 2 lots.
Okay, I just want to make sure we get the town meeting bylaws covered. So I'm inclined to start with the town meeting, of course, 400, so they don't have to sit, but
Yeah.
then start with town meeting. How do other board members feel about that? I mean, we don't have any more time.
I agree.
I agree.
Is there a way to, I mean, I know we've told the applicants they are starting at 6, but maybe give them a heads up if they took a long time for dinner, they wouldn't miss anything.
Yeah, I can certainly relay that when I send out, either tomorrow or what's tomorrow, Wednesday, either tomorrow or Thursday is when the agendas will go out. Tomorrow is my plan. Yeah, and I can let them know that the zoning will take place first.
Okay. Okay, any other business? I don't think so. Kathy, there's nothing else that you said. So at this time, I would ask for a motion to adjourn the planning board meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn the planning board meeting.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Anthony?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Michelle? I'm sorry, I did the 2. Millie?
Aye.
And Carrie, aye. The planning board meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.